Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's press conference. I want to thank my colleagues for being here with me today. Martin Heinrich, Senator from New Mexico, good friend of mine, and Joe Courtney, Congressman from Connecticut, who came in with me in the House in 2006. Right. So it's good to be surrounded by friends, and as you can tell, this is Republicans and Democrats trying to move forward on a piece of legislation. The reason we're here, and I can't overemphasize the importance of this, and that is that I think we're talking about a piece of legislation here that outside the budget process, and the budget itself is probably the most important piece of legislation that has to pass before the end of next year. In fact, I will tell you right now, I think it is a piece of legislation that will pass by the end of next year. And what we're talking about, of course, is the Cadillac tax itself. We're talking about a 40% excise tax on all health care plans over a certain threshold that will affect our states and this country as a whole. In the state of Nevada, we have roughly about 3 million people that live in the state, and this particular tax will affect about 1.3 million of them, about 40%. I have not seen a piece of legislation that brings more sides together. Not only Republicans and Democrats, as you can see up here right now, but unions, large business, big business, seniors, public employees. Every group and organization out there has contacted my office about the importance of this piece of legislation. It doesn't matter what the constituency base may be, and that's why you see a bipartisan group up here. I want to thank my colleagues, especially Joe, for the work that he's done on the House side. He has, and I'll let him speak more about this, but he has done a tremendous job in getting Democrats to sponsor this piece of legislation. I think 130 plus Democrats in the House are supporting this piece of legislation. They got over the 218 threshold for a piece of legislation that can pass the House, and Marty and I are going to do the same thing on the Senate side. And I think we're going to see a breakthrough now. I can't thank him enough, Marty enough, for coming on board last night on this important piece of legislation. Again, this is a 40% excise tax on health care bills that will be that will come into effect in 2018. So we want to stop that. We want to stop that from happening. This affects everybody, middle class. This affects seniors. My concern is, and I can see a scenario where every public employee in the state of Nevada, across this country, become part of the Affordable Care Act because of the impact of this particular tax itself. Why are we talking about it today? Is because of the negotiations that employers have with their employees. We have unions, as some of you may be aware of, in Southern Nevada, the largest unionized city in the country, that are now trying to figure out what they're going to be doing by 2018. So for this to happen in December of 17 doesn't make a lot of sense. They want to know, and they want to be able to plan, not just the unions, but big business, small business, seniors, middle class, lower income, you name it. They want to know what their health care plans are going to be. So with that, that's why we're here. We want to repeal this onerous tax. I'd like to introduce Senator Heinrich from Mexico for his thoughts and comments.
Good morning, everybody, and I want to thank Senator Heller for his leadership on this issue, and I want to thank Joe Courtney, who really was in many ways the spark plug that got me involved in this particular issue as we were negotiating the House positions within the ACA back in 2009, 2010. So this is something that we've literally worked together on for close to 5 years now. And I think what we're seeing dawn on the American public across the political spectrum is that what we said back in 2010 to the leadership who were negotiating the ACA is that this is not a Cadillac tax. This is not a Lexus tax, that this is going to be a forward-focused tax. This is going to hit many, many middle-class citizens across the country, and that it's going to have the wrong incentives for what we had hoped to accomplish through the ACA. And so making sure that we are incentivizing people to get coverage, to get employer-based coverage, especially with some of the rulings that have come out of Treasury about what applies to be able to hit this threshold where the 40% excise tax kicks in, wellness programs, are going to apply towards that. And so this sets up the wrong incentives, in my view. It is going to be a If this were to take effect, it would be a tax on the hardworking middle-class folks who really drive our economy. And that, I think, is why you see the support for changing this so broad across the spectrum. As Senator Heller said, small business, big business, organized labor, seniors, people realize that this is going to have a very far-reaching effect and not necessarily the effect that any of us would like. So we're excited about the prospect of making this change. I think we're going to have a very strong bipartisan coalition, and that's why you see House and Senate leaders here today and both parties represented, because we're going to make our best effort to make this happen sooner rather than later, so that people in negotiations now and who are trying to write their business plans, can think about the end of 2017 and have some certainty.
Great.
Congressman?
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. And to Dean and to Martin, it's, your leadership today really, I think, is a real milestone in terms of addressing a problem that's in the law, and we're determined to fix it. And at the end of the day, that's really what this is about. The evidence has been growing since January, when the Treasury Department issued its notice of rulemaking that showed, as Martin said, the calculation of the tax will sweep up FSA accounts, HSA accounts, wellness programs, preventive services, all the things that I think there is broad bipartisan agreement is the smart way to reduce healthcare costs, and basically, removing that tax exclusion for those types of programs and benefits and smart healthcare policy is exactly the wrong direction that we need to go in this country. Our actuarial firms across the board who represent employee groups, employer groups, have, again, just completely reemphasized the fact that this is the impact of the tax. It shows that, in fact, the impact will land on employer groups that are predominantly female, older, and in high-cost regions of the country. That is not the way that you, in my opinion, administer or enact equitable tax policy. It should not land on people for reasons and factors that they have absolutely no control over, such as their gender, age, and where they live. That has nothing to do with inefficient delivery of health care, and that's the reason why, again, this was such a controversial measure 5 years ago. 192 House members on the Democratic side objected to this measure. That's why it got pushed out 5 years, and that's why the thresholds were changed from when it was initially introduced in 2009. And so today, with the Treasury notice of rulemaking, with the actuarial data, with the real life experience that's going on out there, there were roughly about 60 news articles in local media during the August recess. There was a lockout at Allegheny Steel in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, because the two sides could not resolve this issue. We have collective bargaining, as Dean said, going on right now for multi-year contracts where people have basically thrown up their hands because they cannot come up to a resolution in terms of who pays. And the solution of basically drastically increasing people's deductibles, basically putting them in the position to have to self-diagnose, sitting outside an emergency room or trying to determine whether or not they can pay for a blood test, or all the things that we want people to have access to in an affordable fashion, they should not be put into that predicament. And again, the two senators here today now make this a bicameral effort. We're at 240 roughly in the House between the two measures that have been introduced, and it's very strong bipartisan, and the coalition is extraordinary, as Senator Heller said, in terms of groups that normally can't agree on the time of day, have really come together very strongly in terms of the fact that we don't want to damage people's health benefits. We want to give employers the opportunity to recruit and retain good employees, basically having a blunt instrument, which is what the excise tax is, come in and disrupt people's health coverage that they've negotiated long and hard for, given up wage increases over the years, built their family sort of planning around, is really not good health policy. And that's why, again, there's this organic, strong grassroots support that is, from shipyard workers in Groton to police and fire in New Mexico, casino workers in Nevada. This is happening all over the country, and that's why I am very confident that Senator Heller is correct expect that this is going to get done. This is just not something that you can work with in terms of the real life impact on it, and it's our job as legislators to go in and surgically, intelligently, and in a bipartisan way, fix this problem. So again, congratulations to both of you for your great leadership here. It defies all of the conventional wisdom about Washington to see this bipartisan effort here this morning. So congratulations.